Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Here's where I want to start. I received a very nice comment on BitChute underneath the episode where Luther Smith was on from last Friday. And this individual who's listened to my show numerous times before and has made comments before, but I just wanted to read this because it of course, was very nice of them to say this, and I greatly appreciate it. But also, they point to one of the many reasons why I created this show in the first place. Because again, I saw a very unique gap of information that I thought was lacking, certainly in the subject of education. And as I've commented on the show numerous times before, this is a huge problem. You have numerous individuals commenting on the subject of education who have never been in the business before. And I'm not criticizing individuals who comment on subjects that they've never actually done for a living or even studied it per se. I mean, everybody's entitled to an opinion, and lots of people have different experiences, of course. But at the exact same time, one of the things that you see in the subject of education is numerous individuals just cherry-picking topics and reading headlines, and they're not diving deeper and actually analyzing anything. And it's necessary to do because it's an analytical business, as most businesses are. So again, you're not going to get libs of TikTok stuff here, and you're not going to get, Chris Rufo's latest tweet on what he thinks is important. I mean, there's far more going on, and we're certainly living through the collapse of education. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later regarding some of the numbers here, because what's going on in the local school district where I live is happening in all of them, and they have no idea why, and they're not fixing it. I mean, these are not smart people. But anyway, this comment, which this individual, again, wrote, they said the following. Again, this was in relation to Luther Smith's episode when Luther was on. So here's what they said. They said, quote, "I also found your show from the school board video, but I have stuck around because of the depth of your coverage of the subject matter. Education sounds boring, but it all relates. I think people looking for the next shock video don't want to wade through a long and in-depth analysis. I know when I repost your videos, I have to put in a timestamp because people immediately wail that they can't be expected to listen to an hour-plus video, but a few of us appreciate your dedication," unquote. Again, thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it. That is one of the many reasons why, again, I did this show. This is not a soundbite show. I can't bust this show up. I mean, I suppose I could, but I'd be on it longer than I already am, and putting this together takes a great deal of time, as one might imagine. So busting up, small clips and then putting out a bunch of small clips everywhere so that people get an instant dopamine hit, that's certainly not the point. I do want people to connect these dots. I do want people to see the much larger picture, and frankly, it's basically a comprehension lesson and a revisiting of basic comprehension. I'm interested always in people just sitting and listening and imagining things and having thoughts run through their mind as they sit and they listen. This is important. This is critical thinking. Getting a small dopamine hit because of a click or a small post or, a small video. I'm not saying that that's always a bad thing. It certainly isn't. I mean, it can be problematic, and of course it's highly addictive, certainly among children and even adults. But at the same time, I took a great lesson again from Rush Limbaugh. I mean, I could do other things while I was listening to his show and yet still pay attention. I could also sit quietly and just listen to his show. So I'm not comparing myself to Rush Limbaugh. I'm simply saying that putting together an hour and a half or an hour and 40-minute show is basically like listening to a 3-hour radio show. There's just no commercials here. Again, when Rush Limbaugh or even Ken Matthews, and I used to listen to him too, when those guys put together their shows, they're really only talking for that length of time. They're talking for, an hour and 20, hour and 30 minutes, and sometimes even less across a 3-hour radio show because they were, of course, taking callers. And with that said, I mean, I just disagree with the instant gratification that individuals have where, again, they just want a small clip of something and then they think that they have a much larger understanding of it. Again, I've even read some of the emails from the listeners of this show and even the guests who have been on. They've openly stated, I knew that education was bad, but I've listened to this show, and then you've connected a number of different dots that I had no idea even existed. And again, I appreciate the compliment. I mean, I'm not one to take compliments easily necessarily, but again, I do appreciate it. At the exact same time, I'm connecting these dots too, and I'm continuously learning about this subject and the subjects that are all connected because, like the individual said, it is all connected. There is no doubt about it. This is a giant scheme that has been perpetuated on all of us. And one of the parts that continues to be heartbreaking for me is that with the information that I'm bringing here to this particular platform, endless individuals have no idea what they're doing. They're completely dead asleep. And I have to listen to these people talk, and I have to listen to them beg government for more help, and we need more this, and we need more that. And again, I'm going to describe a woman a little bit later who spoke at the recent board meeting here in the town where I live, and again, she's begging government. She's begging the school board to bring her something that never used to exist in the past. And she has no idea that, of course, her children are old enough to read and write, which means they can raise themselves, teach one another in a home environment. And they can do all of this by themselves away from the school environment that she claims is remarkably problematic for her children and endless other children because, in her words, there isn't enough diversity, equity, and inclusion. So she says. This is the problem. This is a perfect example, again, of an individual who is not awake and has no idea what's going on. So, yeah. Again, thanks for the comment and thanks for the compliment. I do appreciate it, but people have got to raise their awareness, and one of the easiest ways to do that is to dedicate yourself to just listening. Listening skills are going out of the window, and that's what, unfortunately, technology and, of course, the instant gratification of short videos is bringing to people, which is too bad. It's just too bad. There's no critical thinking taking place. And it's not just them, of course, that are going to be the negative recipients of that lack of critical thinking. It is society as a whole. Society will fall as long as people continue within that society to not think. So, yeah, I could ramble on about it even more, but I think you get what I'm saying. Okay. Let me move on to this now, geopolitically speaking. Couple of things. The helicopter crash regarding the Iranian president. I'll say this. I don't know what happened. I truly don't. My mind frame and my dimension of thinking will take in just about every kind of possible scenario, and also at the same time, one of those scenarios will be that it didn't happen, that no one really died. Again, there were allegedly 3 or 4 helicopters that were up in the air regarding him and other individuals, and only one of them crashed while the others did not. I heard an individual on One America News who works for the Biden administration saying that the helicopter was a Russian helicopter that crashed, and she was dead wrong. It was a Bell Industries American helicopter. Again, does that matter? I don't know. I don't think so. And frankly, I'm not sure I care. Either way, Mossad's probably involved. I saw another, why wouldn't they be? Along with the CIA. I also saw another post that had something to do with weather modification, and that all of the weather satellites, quote unquote, were all turned off that particular day. So, again, I don't know what the issue was. I don't know what was actually happening. I have absolutely zero proof that anybody actually died. Again, I saw video of them allegedly taking people, dead bodies that are completely wrapped up and covered out of the woods. I assume that's real. But even so, it just reeks of wanting war, and it reeks of wanting some kind of a coup. I'm not saying that the president, is or was a good guy. He probably wasn't. Again, I heard a lot of stories about him and how he allegedly wanted or did mass execute a bunch of individuals within his country, both as a judge and then when he became the actual president. Again, if that's true, that's horrible. Unless those individuals were bad people, in which case, great. But there's too many angles. Again, it's confusing because there's just too many angles. But what is not confusing is what the Jews have been up to recently. and they've been up to a great deal of things. So let me read off this very quick chronological list here. This was a post, I believe, that was on X by someone, but it was just cropped out, so I don't know who actually typed this out, but here it is, and this has been happening. May 7th, there was the assassination attempt on a Saudi prince, so it was reported, allegedly. And then on May 14th, an attempted coup in Turkey. May 15th, Slovakia's prime minister was shot. On May 16th, assassin of Serbian president arrested. On May 17th, a coup attempt in Burkina Faso. I'm saying that right? On May 18th, a coup attempt in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And who did they arrest? Well, they arrested a Jewish guy, along with other individuals. Again, allegedly working for the CIA. And when you hear the term CIA or that three-letter agency, again, it's safe to say that you should also think of Mossad, because they work hand in hand. And then, of course, May 19th, the Iranian president and foreign minister, I believe, was also killed, allegedly. Now, also as a result of all of that, and I find this part particularly fascinating because this is one of those aspects where the hypocrisy is blinding. Among, again, endless individuals, Gateway Pundit, Real America's Voice, you can pick any of the Con Inc. outlets you want. They're all doing it, even the ones on the hard left. Those outlets are doing the exact same thing too, and they're not even mentioning it. And this specifically has to do with the International Criminal Court bringing about charges, or certainly the prosecution or the wanting prosecution of Benjamin Netanyahu, his foreign minister, and I believe his entire administration, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, let me read this particular statement because, again, this is from Secretary Anthony Blinken. Now, again, the hypocrisy here is absolutely astounding. There are individuals on the so-called right and the left who do not want Netanyahu arrested. Now, he should be arrested and hung and drawn and quartered, and everything else happened to him for a variety of reasons. He's wanted to destroy America and bankrupt America, probably since birth. But, ladies and gentlemen, he was instrumental in 9/11. And no, there were no airplanes on 9/11. He was instrumental in bringing Mossad agents into our country to do everything that they do, including blow up buildings. And our own government was involved, and endless citizens were involved, and 1,000 other things. Business owners, you name it. That was a massive, massive conspiracy. But where the hypocrisy lies with all of this, again, is that by everybody siding with Netanyahu, and not even mentioning this criminal court, or at the very least, again, putting out a statement from Biden's so-called administration saying that they disagree with the arrest of Netanyahu, it's like, well, wait a minute. Does that mean now that the Gateway Pundit, Real America's Voice, Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, Tim Pool, and all those other nitwits, that all of a sudden, they now, agree with Joe Biden's administration and Anthony Blinken? The same outlets that consistently criticize these people, the one thing they all have in common is that when someone who is in Jewish power and is Jewish, all of a sudden they all get the support. They all get the back patting, and everybody lifts that person up and they all stand with that individual. That again should show you how all of these individuals are blackmailed. All of these individuals are paid by the Jewish lobby. Because the moment that any prosecution is called for anybody who is really engaged in war crimes and they happen to be Jewish, everybody just backs their play. It's like all of the political division goes out the window. Now we have, now all of a sudden we have a common friend that we all need to help. It's that individual that is our enemy. That's the real problem here. So here's the statement from Secretary Anthony Blinken. On May 20th, he said the following: for immediate release from the U.S. Department of State, Office of the Spokesperson. This is in regards to the warrant applications by the International Criminal Court. It says, quote, the United States fundamentally rejects the announcement today from the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court that he is applying for arrest warrants for senior Israeli officials together with warrants for Hamas terrorists. We reject the prosecutor's equivalence of Israel with Hamas. It is shameful. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. Wait a minute. They are equivalent. They are equivalent. This is a fact. Because there was no Hamas without Israel. Israel funded Hamas. That was the whole point. I mean, even Lenin spoke about this back in the day. We will fund both sides. We will create the conflict by simply funding and starting both sides. We'll control both sides. That's the history of Hamas. That's it. So calling it shameful, I mean, all these facts are shameful. Okay, whatever you say. It says Hamas is a brutal terrorist organization that carried out the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust and is still holding dozens of innocent people hostage, including Americans. First of all, none of that's true, and there's no proof for the latter statement. There's absolutely no proof that anybody is being held hostage. No proof. Again, I don't like any of these sides. I hate them all. They're all evil. But again, I'm just pointing out the hypocrisy here that apparently is being lost on endless people. It says, moreover, the United States has been clear since well before the current conflict that the ICC has no jurisdiction over this matter. The ICC was established by its state parties as a court of limited jurisdiction. Those limits are rooted in principles of complementarity, which do not appear to have been applied here amid the prosecutor's rush to seek these arrest warrants rather than allowing the Israeli legal system a full and timely opportunity to proceed. In other situations, the prosecutor deferred to national investigations and worked with states to allow them time to investigate. The prosecutor did not afford the same opportunity to Israel, which has ongoing investigations into allegations against its personnel. Now that's funny, of course, because Israel can investigate themselves, because that always works out. We need to give them time to look into their own crimes and decide whether or not they were responsible for anything. Wow. It goes on, it says there are also deeply troubling process questions. It says, despite not being a member of the court, Israel was prepared to cooperate with the prosecutor. I bet they weren't. It says, in fact, the prosecutor himself was scheduled to visit Israel as early as next week to discuss the investigation and hear from the Israeli government. Right. And the prosecutor probably would have been killed. It says the prosecutor's staff was supposed to land in Israel today to coordinate the visit. Israel was informed that they did not board their flight around the same time that the prosecutor went on cable television to announce the charges. It's almost like the prosecutor was given a heads up that they were going to get killed. Sounds like that, doesn't it? Doesn't it sound like that's basically an open admission? All of a sudden, the prosecutor just took to the TV to announce the charges because they didn't want to board a plane to Israel. Yeah, I wouldn't want to get on a plane to Israel either. It says these and other circumstances, it says, calls into question the legitimacy and credibility of this investigation. No, it doesn't. It's quite the opposite. It proves that these people are over the target. They know exactly what they're doing, assuming, again, that all of this isn't some show. It wraps up here and it says, fundamentally, this decision does nothing to help and could jeopardize ongoing efforts to reach a ceasefire agreement that would get hostages out and surge humanitarian assistance in, which are the goals of the United States continues to pursue relentlessly. Now again, that's funny, because wasn't it Israel that bombed that very humanitarian assistance? Wasn't it them that actually killed all of those people who were associated with that food group, delivering food and aid to individuals in Gaza? Sure it was. Again, this entire letter is an indictment on the United States. This entire letter is an indictment on everybody who supports Israel and Netanyahu. Every single person's hypocrisy is being brought to bear here and is out in the open. Every single person, every politician, every news outlet, even the so-called alternative outlets on the right. Again, Real America's Voice, for example, probably One America News, and certainly Right Side Broadcasting, potentially. I mean, who really knows? It's certainly Real America's Voice. They're all in for Israel. Well, they're our greatest ally. And yeah, they're killing people, but we're not going to talk about that. And, well, we like Benjamin Netanyahu, but we're not going to comment on anything that's happening right now. And they also, of course, are not commenting. None of these outlets are commenting on the fact that Endless individuals in Israel are protesting Netanyahu and protesting what they're actually doing, allegedly. Again, the hypocrisy is everywhere. But again, this is put out by Anthony Blinken, who is Jewish, and then at the exact same time, he's working for the Biden administration, which means, again, everybody apparently just agrees with the Biden administration. This is the one thing they all agree on a constant basis. It's beyond disgusting, but this has to be pointed out. When everybody gets tight-lipped about an international court calling for the arrest of an entire administration who's been engaging in war crimes and starving people to death, along with dropping bombs on top of their heads, for absolutely no reason whatsoever, because of a completely contrived and fake attack, where the IDF was killing their own citizens with Apache helicopters. But remember, Anthony Blinken said it's worse than the Holocaust, or the worst attacks since the Holocaust. Well, that didn't happen either. All of these moves are based on deception. All of these moves are based on lies. And every single American person continues to be lied to, and they can't figure this out, and then they don't want to figure out who's lying to them. I've brought the point up numerous times, and again, Luther Smith and I discussed this at length. This right here continues to be the problem. That if people don't know that they're being lied to, and then when someone tells them you're being lied to, you're being misled by all of these apparent groups and media outlets and individuals who claim to support you and claim to have your best interests in mind, when they all get tight-lipped on a very particular issue, that should be suspicious. People should think, wait a minute, why are they taking two separate sides of a particular issue here? Again, I just think that the hypocrisy is glaring. They have no problem putting a clip on their websites making fun of Joe Biden falling down or shitting his pants. And at the exact same time, they apparently now like Anthony Blinken. And they're all friends again. Because they have that one thing in common. Israel. Isn't that interesting? Again, I just wish that people would pay attention to that. I'm certain that endless people are, but we're not hearing it. We're just not hearing it. We're not hearing anybody go, wait a minute, hang on. Now all of a sudden, what? You like everything that Biden says regarding Israel? So what is that? In fact, this is an odd thing too. What you'll actually hear from time to time from the so-called conservative right is they'll say things like, well, Joe Biden's wrong on Israel and he's not doing enough against Hamas and blah, blah, blah. His own Secretary of State just put out a memo saying that they don't want anybody in Israel to be prosecuted for anything because they haven't done anything wrong, so they say. It doesn't get more pro-Israel than that. But again, this is the confusion. There's too many sides. There's too many people to please, and they don't know what they're doing. This should prove to people how confusing all of this is and how everybody's being manipulated. But again, it just blows me away that people don't want to know who's doing the manipulating. Who's doing the string pulling on all of this? Yes, you're being lied to. Yes, you're being manipulated. Now ask the who, what, where, when, why, and how, and you'll find your answer. I don't know. Maybe thinking's just too hard these days. Maybe it's just too hard for people. I don't want to think. I want other people to do the thinking for me. There's your artificial intelligence right there. That's the other definition of artificial intelligence. People not thinking and then thinking they're intelligent, and all they're doing is just repeating everything that other people tell them to do, say, think, behave, whatever it may be. It's gross. Okay. Speaking of artificial intelligence, this particular story caught my eye, and this is the last little geopolitical issue I have here for this episode, but this is from defenseblog.com, and it was titled, and just from the other day, May 20th, Northrop Grumman partners with NVIDIA to accelerate AI innovation. Again, if this sounds suspicious, it should. None of this sounds good. It says Northrop Grumman Corporation announced on the 16th of May an agreement to access and use NVIDIA AI software to accelerate the development of advanced systems. Now, what does Northrop Grumman make? They make weapons. And what are weapons for? They're designed to kill people. Probably us too. It says this agreement, facilitated by Future Tech Enterprise, grants Northrop Grumman access to NVIDIA's extensive portfolio of AI and generative AI software, including platforms and frameworks such as NVIDIA Omniverse. It says the partnership opens new research and development pathways, enabling Northrop Grumman to quickly integrate advanced AI technologies across its platform, enhancing operational efficiency. Yes, I'm sure it will. We got to kill people quicker than we already are doing it. NVIDIA's AI platform, it says, quote, will help us deliver Northrop Grumman's advanced capabilities to our customers faster and with greater effect, said Vern Boyle, Vice President of Northrop Grumman Microelectronics Center. They went on and said, quote, NVIDIA's AI platform is at the forefront of the industry, driving innovation that solves difficult challenges, quote unquote, said Anthony Robbins, Vice President of the North America Public Sector at NVIDIA. Quote, Northrop Grumman is the latest example of how businesses and organizations around the world are increasingly using NVIDIA AI software to realize the potential of AI, unquote. None of this is good. That's not very analytical, but it just sounds bad, doesn't it? Doesn't this sound beyond suspicious and very gross? I mean, they want us dead. These very American companies that work globally and hire, of course, brainwashed individuals right out of college who are groomed to work for these organizations, integrating artificial intelligence into all of their killer robots to do what? Is it designed to make life easier for people? I don't think so. It's designed to eliminate people. Again, and it's also, I should say, designed to eliminate people covertly. Because remember, there's the old saying here when it comes to AI. If a computer does it, it's not a crime. Because you can't prosecute a computer, can you? You can't hang a computer. You can't draw and quarter or shoot with a firing squad a computer. I mean, I suppose you could. It'd just look a little strange. But at the end of the day, these are human beings creating this. And they're just going to place the blame on the computer. Well, the computer went haywire and it made a bad decision and there are glitches and we can just expect that. The more, ladies and gentlemen, that computers take over things, in particular decision-making or algorithms for, again, making some kind of a military strike on a particular location, and the people who are behind it actually facilitating all of this, those are the people who are nuts. Those people have lost their minds. And again, as I've said in numerous episodes, this is a perfect example of one of the things that has to cease to exist. And we, of course, have to see this happen. If we don't see the Northrop Grummans of the world, we're never going to have world peace. If we don't watch all of the individuals get fired from such a company, and companies like this go bankrupt with all their AI systems and weapon systems and integrating all of that, it's game over. They're doing this because they like it. They're doing this because they think that this is normal. And they don't care that they're killing people for fun. It's no sweat off their back. None. Okay, education stuff. Here we go. Just very quickly regarding this particular subject. This is turning into a rather interesting trend, I think. Certainly a tradition, if not a ritual, on a year in and year out basis in the month of May regarding K-12 education, and it has to do with graduation shootings. Isn't this fun? Again, no offense, but it's not happening at predominantly white schools. Anyway, this particular one, actually there was one in Cincinnati just the other day. It was hours after a particular graduation, a high school graduation, but there was a shooting where apparently someone died. And now there was this one, Cape Girardeau in Missouri. It says the following here: 2 people were injured when gunfire broke out during a high school graduation commencement in Missouri, causing hundreds of people to scatter and forcing the ceremony to be postponed. The shooting happened around 2:30 p.m. Sunday in Cape Girardeau, a city of 40,000 residents, about 115 miles south of St. Louis. The 2 people injured were not students, but both are expected to survive, police said in a statement. And then, of course, there was another graduation where I saw the video anyway, and I think I put it in the war video, but again, a predominantly black school, if I'm not mistaken. A student walked past another, took off his graduation cap, threw it right at the guy's head. Gang signs were allegedly flashed back and forth, and then a fight broke out as a resource officer tried to meet hook a couple of people and take them out of the ceremony. Good times. Again, it's a year in and year out thing. I remember this happening last year. And again, occasionally you would hear of a story, certainly in the past, of this happening from time to time, but it's becoming more of a regular thing. Rather interesting, I think. Rather pathetic, of course, and embarrassing, and then everybody gets shouted at by the principal, and sometimes a principal will get fired or someone will get blamed, and parents start blaming the school because of the actions of a couple of students, so to speak. But yeah, the whole thing is embarrassing. What a waste of time. Again, graduation ceremonies, give me a break. It's the same drama every single year. A good speech is given and people lose their minds. A bad speech is given, people lose their minds. Someone gets shot, someone gets in a fight. Some administrator says something inappropriate and gets blamed. People walk out. It's all nonsense. And of course, graduations get canceled, certainly at the college and university level, like they did this past year regarding protests and everything. But man, what a waste. Just a waste of energy and a waste of time. Okay. On to a local issue here, and let me spend a little time on this. Again, this is the local school district where I live here in Southwest Ohio. And again, just as a quick reminder, the things that happen in the local school district where I live, these are happening all over the place. Every single one of these little issues that comes up, certainly the finances, continues to be a giant glaring light on the fact that these schools are going bankrupt and now they're having to come to the taxpayer to bail them out yet again. Because let's face it, that's what a levy is. It's a self-tax and a self-punishment for a bailout for the fiscal irresponsibility of a school. Now, as you would expect, all of these schools across the nation do the same kinds of things. They invite more and more programs. They invite more and more policy, more and more procedures, and then more and more people to facilitate all of that nonsense, and then they end up spending more than what they actually have. This is a common practice across the board, and these people can't seem to figure out that they are responsible for their own financial turmoil. Case in point, the ESSER funds that went out as a result of the quote-unquote COVID pandemic. Let me give you a taste as to what they actually just voted on in last week's school board meeting regarding their ESSER funds and their use of ESSER funds. When the ESSER funds first came out from the CARES Act, and all of the schools, again, received all that cash, and the vast majority of them accepted it, and they shouldn't have. And I've gone over numerous reasons why they shouldn't have taken the money. But what's happened, of course, is as a result of all of that ESSER money, they invited in endless things that they have to pay for. And now that the ESSER money is gone, those things that they've implemented, they still have to pay for. And if they aren't paying for them, then they have to pay for the repairs of such things. And then they have to pay for, again, the upkeep or the outright replacement of whatever it is that they bought with those ESSER funds. Case in point, in the last board meeting, what they actually spent some of the ESSER money on were Chromebooks for every single student. Every single student, as a result of the ESSER money, received a Chromebook. Now again, their justification for voting to pay for new Chromebooks for every single student, again, was that the Chromebooks are cheap. Yes, the first time we had all of them, we used the ESSER money for it, but now the ESSER money is gone, and well, we need to get new Chromebooks now for every single student because it's necessary for the child's education, quote unquote. Again, let's review the ESSER situation very briefly. And I'll summarize it by saying this. The distribution of money among the K-12 apparatus in the United States, all of that was the largest money laundering operation that has ever taken place in the history of American public education. Period. The only reason they don't call it money laundering is because it was sanctioned by the government. The government gave them a free check. They said it's for the COVID pandemic. Schools went, okay. And then they started to spend it on whatever they wanted to, by and large. And if they had a question as to what they could or could not spend it on, all they had to do was contact someone at the state, and then the state would say yes or no. And in most cases, they said yes. Now, someone explained to me how a Chromebook in the hands of a student prevents COVID. Now, you know COVID doesn't exist, just like I know it doesn't exist. So the comparison is ridiculous because it's money laundering. Again, if I was to make another comparison, I would say this. It would be like giving a school district a free Ferrari. I'm not comparing Chromebooks to Ferraris, but I'm simply saying if you give a school district a free Ferrari, the school district goes, yeah, a Ferrari for free? Awesome. Nothing is for free. So they end up taking it because they're gullible. What they don't understand is that the insurance on a Ferrari is remarkably expensive, and that the upkeep and maintenance of a Ferrari is awfully expensive. And oops, if you wreck a Ferrari, well, that gets expensive too. But don't worry, the Ferrari was free. And then they tell themselves, once all the money is gone, and they now have to start spending their own money on the upkeep of the Ferrari itself, which they don't have to spend. They tell themselves that the Ferrari is necessary for the education of all of our students. And this is their justification for keeping the thing that they think is important. Now, of course, the joke is on them regarding Chromebooks. Chromebooks are tracking devices. They spy on children. They create a digital footprint and fingerprint of a child that is designed to follow them all the way through adulthood on every device that they are on. This is happening within every school, within every single Chromebook, and with every piece of technology that they possess, certainly within the wireless environment and 5G environments that are school districts. But they blindly vote for them. They blindly vote for the replacement of these Chromebooks because, again, they tell themselves that they need them, that it's the only way they'll get an education and we use them all the time. Well, then why aren't they homeschooling themselves? If a laptop is all they need, why are they waking up early in the morning to get on a terrible bus to drive to your stupid brick and mortar school to stare at a computer all day when they could be doing it from home for far shorter amount of time on their own? I've pointed out that hypocrisy too. These very schools are adopting the very habits and the very practices that actual homeschooling families engage in, certainly from a technological standpoint, which I'm not saying is always bad. You need technology, of course, to learn and communicate and a number of other things. But at the exact same time, they don't understand that they took all of this free money, quote unquote, from government to pay for these things that they're now being forced to implement and are implementing, and now the money is gone. And now they still need to use the things because, well, we can't take them away because we're too used to it. But this is why they're running out of money. This is why American K-12 schools are going bankrupt. This is why they're consolidating their buildings. They, of course, are very quick to blame the low birth rate, and that certainly plays a role, but that's not the real reason. More people are choosing homeschooling, and these administrators know that. But what they don't understand is it's their own actions and their own begging and their own ineptitude that is contributing to all of this. So let me point out a couple of things that happened in this last meeting. In this last board meeting, beyond the Chromebook nonsense and again begging for money and all of the finances, we know for a fact that what they're going to do, along with endless K-12 school districts across the nation, is they're going to put more levies on ballots to fund their criminal operation because they're running out of money. All the government cash is gone. States have less of it to give to public schools. Less people are going to public schools. They're going bankrupt, which means their absolute last-ditch effort to keep things going is to tax the ever-living hell out of people who are already being taxed. So just where I live, for the local school district, here's their operating revenue. The treasurer herself, who is a complete nitwit, even put this out, and it's astounding. And again, she sounds very pathetic and sad when she's bringing up these percentages, but this is relatively accurate across across the nation, regardless of the school district. This is the percentage breakdown of the amount of money that they receive as a public school district and where they get it from. Approximately 45% comes from real estate taxes alone. 45%. Now, again, the interesting part about this pie graph is that they're showing you how to bankrupt them. And I've said it a million times on the show, and you know I've said it a million times, and I'll say it again. You bankrupt them by not participating. Because they can't tax you if no one shows up. If no one shows up, the whole thing crumbles. But it's only the brainwashed who believe that schools have to exist within a school district or within a town or a city. And if you don't have a public school district, well then, what in the hell are we going to do? Property values will decline. No one will want to move here because there's no school district. That's not true. That's not true. If people broke free from that brainwashing and they understood that if there's no school district, then you won't have taxes the way that you have them right now. The vast majority of your income tax, or certainly your real estate tax in this particular case, although income tax makes up 22%, in this particular school district anyway, of the amount of money that they receive, 45% of it is wrapped up in real estate taxes. But if that goes away, that means that money comes back to you. Do people not want more money? What would people do with that money? Maybe they would invest in homeschooling. Maybe they would start their own school. Maybe they could, be independent and free of the government brainwashing and the control that exists. But they aren't. They're so brainwashed that they beg for it. The parents literally beg other parents to vote for a school tax levy. Again, I can't even comprehend that level of brainwashing. It's so deep. But 45% again goes to real estate taxes. 22% is wrapped up in income tax. 21% is the state foundation. So the state only provides them approximately 21 to 25% of all of their revenue. And then they have another 7% that's wrapped up in other local donations and grants and other things like that. So again, that's generally the percentage breakdown as to where school districts get their money. Again, the vast majority is simply in people's participation. And if they walked away, and they walked away as a whole and as a mass, it would even have to be, again, a certain percentage of people who would have to walk away, but if they did, the school can't operate. It just couldn't. You can't keep the lights on if, say, for example, half of the student population leaves. That means that half of the teachers would get fired. That means that other staff members would have to pick up other responsibilities and try to make ends meet, but ultimately they couldn't. It would put them, for the first time, in the spotlight in a real financial situation that they wouldn't be able to escape. Now, here's one of those problems. And here's where the brainwashing comes in. And here's a piece of audio I'm going to play from a woman who came up to the microphone. And you're going to hear her again begging government to give her the thing that she thinks needs to exist within the American K-12 school system and certainly within their school district. She's quite literally begging for more diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. Because, as she says, there's too much anti-Semitism and too much black hatred and name-calling going on at the middle school, and where are all the policies and where's all the accountability and so on and so on. Now, the irony, before I play the audio, of her mentioning all of this, is that if you were to ask her in the past, when she herself was a student, was there a time when there was diversity, equity, and inclusion in the schools that she attended when she was younger? The answer, of course, is no. She would say, well, no, there wasn't, but I wish there was. She'd probably say something like that. But then you would look at her and you would say, well, are you doing okay right now? Because your past schools, when you were younger, didn't have diversity, equity, and inclusion. It wasn't even invented yet, which means that it's fake, because if it has to be invented by someone in a boardroom and then implemented within a school, that's usually not a good thing. So now that it does exist and the school has these policies in place and they're all stupid and they're all confusing and they're all a waste of time, and most people with a brain know that. But if you were to confront her with any of this, she wouldn't be able to recognize that it didn't exist in the past. It exists now. And it's, again, a giant money laundering scheme that there's no reason to even have it because it's all pretend. It's all made up. None of it means anything. There are just rules in school, and if students don't follow rules, then they're supposed to be disciplined. But of course, that doesn't happen. Case in point, also, one of the very board members that she's actually speaking to. One of the board members, who is a gay man, who I've brought up on the show before, has 3 adopted children. One of those children openly threatens to kill other students with regularity. And he's been suspended for doing so, but he always comes back. And then he comes back, and then he threatens to stab and kill more students, and then something may or may not happen, and then he goes back to class. So, again, the irony of wanting more diversity, equity, and inclusion, and yet the person she's begging is quite literally their own definition of diversity, equity, and inclusion. He's a white gay man with mixed race or black adopted children, and one of them is threatening to kill students in the school building, and has in the past. And police have been involved, and police reports have been filed, both locally and at the sheriff's department. But she thinks, again, that it's just white students doing all the hating. Well, that's absurd. But again, if you confront her with all of her own hypocrisy and the hypocrisy of all of this in this giant brainwashing scheme, she would call you crazy. So let's find out who's crazy, her or me. I'm going to play this audio right now. It's a little choppy on this audio, so my apologies if you hear some breaks. But yeah, not my fault. It's on their end. So here we go. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Good evening. My name is Timmy Sirenstruck, and I'm the parent of 3 children in the Talawanda District, one at Kramer, one at TMS, and one at THS. I'm here today to inquire about the progress of the district's diversity and equity plan and to ensure, as the document itself states, that we're creating a school climate that embraces diversity and supports personal and academic growth for all of the district's students. As we listen to the committee's presentation year after year, we remain unclear about the specific progress that has been made. While the committee or the district avoids real progress in the area, these presentations send a clear message that only the perception of inclusion is important, and the hard work of trying to achieve it, however, is not. Stated another way, the diverse members of this community are not worth anything more than words. We all acknowledge that it is impossible to accomplish all that is laid out in the district's plan in 1 year, but the district can and should identify at least one actionable item within the plan to accomplish each year and track that accomplishment with data. It is possible to do something, at least one thing, to demonstrate that equity and inclusion are important. Additionally, more developed and transparent use of equity and diversity data would allow the board to take these into account when making a decision like the one to rescind high school busing that will surely disproportionately affect the members of our community who are already vulnerable because of their low socioeconomic status. Another urgent issue for us is the rampant use of discriminatory language, especially at the middle school. Our children hear anti-Black, anti-Semitic language daily. Has the district been tracking these events, using any data to know if interventions are having an impact? What about bias in discipline reporting or selection for advanced courses? There are so many places where lack of action is causing harm to our students, and so many of these issues have been identified in the district's plan since 2013. We implore you to make this coming year the year of accountability. The hard work has already been done. The plan is finished. The time has come to get to work on the no less than 40 items laid out for the district to implement in this area. The board needs to hold Dr. Thoreau accountable. Dr. Thoreau needs to hold the committee accountable. The committee chairs should hold the committee members accountable. Unless, of course, the goal is only to perform allyship rather than to actually work to empower the students and staff to work together toward a vibrant, diverse, and intercultural world, as the document states. I will leave you with the words of James Baldwin: "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." Good evening.
Again, that's a piece of audio I could spend the rest of the episode breaking down and discussing. She's lost her mind. And I mean that. I mean, I'm not laughing about it. She's lost her mind. That's a woman who is saying things that don't even exist. It doesn't even exist. We need more equitable this, we need more diverse this, we need more this, we need more that. No, by the way, it's only white students who make fun of other students, and they're making fun of blacks and Jews, and it's only whites that do that. Again, victim, 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 all the time. Constant victim status. Everybody else is to blame except me. We're holier than thou. We know exactly what's going on. We're the wisest. We're the smartest. So she thinks. The exact opposite is true. She's saying things that aren't real. She's bringing up completely pretend vocabulary that was created for the purpose of, again, money laundering and confusion. She's a tool in that game and a pawn in that game, and she's being used, and she doesn't even know it. So that's why it's so effective, is because if the person doesn't know that they're being used and manipulated, well, that's the target. That's the very person that the entire government system and certainly schools and communists and you name it are all interested in manipulating. They want these individuals as their ultimate target to carry out their goals. That's why they were called the useful idiots. See, the useful idiots wasn't for people like us. We are not the useful idiots. We're the individuals walking away from these systems. It's these individuals who are begging for these systems to get bigger with time on a day in and day out basis. She wants them to track something that can't be tracked. She claims that there's inequities in signing up for talented and gifted classes or advanced placement, as she put it. Prove it. Prove it. The other thing that I found was interesting too is that this is a prime example of the liberal snake eating its own tail. They always eat each other. Always. She went down the line. She blames the superintendent. I mean, they're all Democrats. But again, she blames the superintendent, blames the board president, blames all the board members, tells them all that they need to hold each other accountable all the time and hold the people at the school buildings accountable for everything that they're doing and blah, blah, blah. This is a woman who also has no problem identifying all three of her own children and saying, I have one in the elementary, one in the middle, and one in the high school. My question to her is, why don't you have those students teaching themselves at home, your children teaching themselves at home? They are of diverse ages. I thought diversity was your thing. I thought that's what you wanted. But see, it's only diversity of feeling. It's not diversity of actual objectivity. She doesn't want to pull them out of the school district and have them teach themselves in what would clearly be a safer environment, as opposed to, of course, all the name calling that she doesn't like and all the inequities and blah, blah, blah. And then she, again, victim blames and just claims her victim status and sticks that flag in the ground because she has to let everybody know that, again, she's a perpetual victim and always will be. You can't help these people. You can't help that level of brainwashing. It's too deep. That's not a woman who's going to survive. She will not make it. She won't make it in the future. And her children who are listening to her and listen to, again, the excuses that she makes for her own children's behavior. These children are growing up learning how to be manipulated, number one, manipulate other people, and then have complete pretend expectations about the world around them. This is all developmental, and it's designed to be that way. Brainwashing is a developmental activity. You need the brainwashed to brainwash youth. And then those youth either grow up and one of two things happens. They unbrainwash themselves by recognizing that they've been brainwashed, or they remain brainwashed and then they brainwash the people around them. And they meet up with like brainwashed people and similar individuals, and then they reproduce if they do so, and then the cycle continues. Again, that kind of mind frame isn't going to work because the person who spoke before her was an individual who ran for the school board who I voted for, who lost. And he came back, and what he was asking for was quote unquote transparency regarding a number of different issues that I've brought up in the past here most recently, again, specifically regarding a student survey and a community survey that went out regarding the busing. And he was, again, complaining about the busing and the different systems that they use, and how the board is again manipulating everybody regarding the busing. Well, that's a more serious problem, because you have an entire school board lying to people, and they're hiding information, and then they're lying about hiding information. That's a serious problem. And again, the irony with his comments was earlier in their presentation, in the board's presentation, they were talking about the roles and responsibilities of the board members, the treasurer, and the superintendent. They had to throw up an actual PowerPoint presentation describing what their job is. This is how stupid these people are. Again, they lie to the public, they manipulate everybody, and then they remind everyone that they have a job to do also, and we want to show you what our job is, so we'll put it on a PowerPoint presentation just to remind everyone. But don't worry, this one parent with 3 kids in this brainwashing system is concerned about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And a so-called black or a Jew student getting made fun of from time to time. Everybody gets made fun of in school. Does she not know this? It's the environment. That's why it's prison. That's why it's called prison, because in prison, people get made fun of. And yes, it's a violent place. So is school. So is prison. That's the way it works. Again, this woman doesn't seem to understand that she has a high school-aged child, and a middle school-aged child, and a elementary school-aged child, and that they could quite literally teach one another in their own home. That the older sibling could teach themselves online and far faster and graduate far sooner than what they currently are now, because again, they're in this matrix, they're in this government system, and then at the exact same time, actually help their younger siblings. And instead of creating division across grade differences, and creating division among, attending different buildings, they would actually come together as a family of siblings and probably care about each other even more than they already do. But the mother doesn't even see that. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is her number one concern. Again, you can't save that. You can't fix that problem. And that's not a survivable characteristic. There's also this. Again, kind of getting back to the finances, but this is leaning now into some jab talk here. In that same board meeting, and this right here, I've brought this up, and ladies and gentlemen, this is proof. This is proof that what I said a long time ago regarding the combination and joining the education system and the medical system at the hip, like conjoined twins, this right here proves it. This school district where I live, they have a health and wellness coordinator. I've met this person. They're not the sharpest knife in the drawer. They're also brainwashed, and they are quite literally a tool. They will do whatever they are told to do. If an email shows up in their email box, they read it and they apply it. Who does that sound like? What profession does that sound like? It's beyond alarming. This was an individual who, again, was heavy into the mask wearing, has to have taken the shots. I'm surprised she's alive. And here, right here, is the proof of what I'm talking about when they've combined, when the medical industry and the American K-12 public school system has combined. There is a hospital conglomerate in Southwest Ohio here where I live, and it could exist numerous places, so my apologies if I'm getting this wrong or short-sighting this, but it's referred to as Tri-Health. And basically, Tri-Health has their fingers in numerous hospitals, and they have numerous offices in numerous hospitals. Again, they're a giant conglomerate and a massive corporation, and this is just what they do. Tri-Health just gave this individual a $30,000 grant, or donated. It may not even be a grant. They just flat out donated $30,000 to this health and wellness coordinator of this one school district that has one high school, one middle school, and 3 elementary schools. Ladies and gentlemen, if a hospital conglomerate is giving $30K to a health and wellness coordinator in not a very large school district, what are other health conglomerates giving, and health companies and NGOs? What are they giving their health and wellness coordinators? How much money are they giving them? Again, in even smaller districts or even bigger ones. This right here is enormous. This is such a massive problem. They've essentially funded her entire operation on top of her already existing salary, if she still has one in the district. Now, what's that $30,000 for? Is it for personal funds? Can she spend it any way that she wants? Does she have to report back with receipts as to what she's spending this on? God only knows. I have no idea. But what I do know is that with that $30K comes agreement. There has to be a contractual agreement that you're going to agree with anything and everything that we push on you, and you need to make sure and implement what we tell you to implement within this school district anytime we tell you. Case in point, this particular high school, at the very least, is now called a heart-safe school. It's a picture that I'm looking at right here of this band of nitwits, and they're all holding up this banner. And it's from Cincinnati Children's Health Hospital. The Greater Cincinnati Project Adam, which was one of those kids who fell down and died of a heart attack way before the jabs. We're talking like a decade ago at least. And now all of a sudden, again, they're making it about him, demonstrating a strong commitment to cardiac emergency preparedness. And here they all are, most of them overweight, all of them look rather unhealthy, except for a couple of gals. But everybody, it just looks like they're in terrible shape. But don't worry, they're a heart-safe school. I bet almost all of them are jabbed. The irony is so thick here, I don't even know what to do. Again, the health and wellness coordinator was putting signs in people's yards saying, wear the mask, get your shots, all this stuff. And a giant hospital conglomerate has now paid her $30,000 for this entire school year, for the next calendar year. This is happening across the nation in all of these schools. They're putting defibrillators in their schools. They have students dropping out because of health problems. They have students dropping dead on the field of play during school, and they don't know why. Hell, their own staff members are sick. Administrators are sick. Administrators have died. Coaches have died. Staff members have died. But don't worry, our health and wellness coordinator is partnering with a hospital, has been given a bunch of money, and as the board president said, oh, thank God. Thank God she got this generous donation. This is so fantastic. We just love her efforts. These people are not awake. They don't know what's going on. Even now, after all this time. And as you've heard me say before too, one of the dead giveaways that they're still dead asleep is the lack of accountability. They don't understand that the entire COVID thing was an entire lie. They don't understand that the ESSER money was money laundering. They don't understand what they've actually participated in, and that they, out of their own mouths, were actually advocating for individuals, including their own staff members, to get those shots, those biological weapons, because it's the safest way to prevent against COVID, quote unquote. Meeting after meeting after meeting, they consistently said it. Again, we're really living in an age of massive hypocrisy here, and it really is incredible. And again, a person doesn't even have to have a very large attention span or a long attention span. You just have to be able to see it when it's happening. Again, these individuals advocating for their own destruction, and they have absolutely no idea. And then, of course, in their hubris, they're trying to play the hero and pat each other on the back and hold up banners and signs and say, we did a thing. We're good people. Look at us. We did a thing. It's all an illusion. The whole thing is just smoke and mirrors. It's incredible. I feel terrible for the people associated with these systems. I truly do. The students in particular. They just have no idea how they're being yanked around and completely manipulated. But hey, if they don't wake up, they're going to have to figure it out the hard way. Okay, more jab-related stuff here. Just very quickly, Klaus Schwab is apparently stepping down from the World Economic Forum, but don't worry, another head of another snake will pop up. It doesn't really mean anything one way or another, but it's a neat headline, I guess. Doesn't mean he'll go away either. He'll still be in control of a number of things, I'm sure. But I bounced over to, very quickly, bailiwicknews.substack.com, which is Catherine Watt's Substack page. And she mentions something here regarding the WHO's pandemic treaty, and basically saying that the global pandemic preparedness and response provisions already exist in the United States domestic law. And she lays it out here. Now, she's not wrong. It is in the actual law, and she lists all of this, and certainly within this policy. And as you've heard me say and read on the show, as the documents exist on my website, same thing. Health and Human Services, the FDA, they've all worked together. There's no more informed consent. Certainly not in trials, which means there doesn't have to be informed consent regarding anything else. And then if they want to push something through because they think it's important and they deem it to be important, well, then it is. So they say, which means then it has to be policy. It has to be procedure. This is the way that, it's just going to end up. Again, I forget the city. I want to say maybe it was Chicago, but there was a Chicago emergency room where all of the doctors and nurses just walked out. They all walked out of the emergency room right in the middle of the day because of, again, their policies. Now, I don't know the full background on that story, but it certainly sounds interesting, and we know that this happens, and I'm shocked that it's not actually happening more often because these hospitals are still putting in these policies that are still killing people. They still have shot policies. They still have mask-wearing policies. They're not changing. So whether there's a pandemic treaty, quote-unquote, or not, it's still global government, and it's still about reading emails and then following what the email says. Now, within her actual Substack here, Catherine Watt, there's a couple of points that I want to read here, which, again, should prove to people that this is already in writing. This is already law, and this already exists. She has highlighted here the terms Global Health Security Agenda, or GHSA, means the multi-sectoral initiative launched in 2014 and renewed in 2018 that brings together countries, regions, international organizations, non-governmental organizations, NGOs, and the private sector. That's everybody. That's the American K-12 school system. The American K-12 school system is global government. That's why they all do the same things. That's why everybody reads the same books. That's why they all adopt the same policies. They're all a part of the same organizations. It's no different in the medical field. It says, there's a number of bullet points here. It says to evaluate global health security as a national level priority is one of their goals here, or one of the benchmarks, I should say. It says to share best practices and to facilitate national capacity to comply with and adhere to the international health regulations as of 2005. It says the international standards and guidelines established by the World Organization for Animal Health. So that's not good for animals either. It says the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1540, which was written in 2004. It says the Convention on the Prohibition of the Development, Production, and Stockpiling of Bacteriological and Toxin Weapons, and on their destruction done at Washington, London, and Moscow, April 10th of 1972, commonly referred to as the Biological Weapons Convention. It says the Global Health Security Agenda of 2024 framework and other relevant frameworks that contribute to global health security. And then she wrote here that the Global Health Security Index means the comprehensive assessment and benchmarking of health security and related capabilities across the countries that make up the state's parties to the international health regulations as far as 2005 regarding the year that was implemented. It says the term Global Health Security Initiative also means the informal network of countries and organizations that came together in 2001 to undertake concerted global action to strengthen public health preparedness and response to chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear threats, including pandemic influenza. It just goes on and on and on here. Again, they always give themselves away with their word usage. It's always in their word usage when they tell you that they want a one world government and a one singular operating system. Now again, and this is nice, that the state of Louisiana, for example, has openly already apparently voted on not accepting any of the WEF or WHO mandates of any kind, or any measures or any pandemic treaties. We'll see if that actually stands or not. Because again, if there are hospitals in the state of Louisiana that are taking orders from the WHO, well, then you're going to have a legal fight on your hands. And that's going to be real interesting. But it goes on here very quickly, and it says the term One Health approach, and that's in quotes, means the collaborative, multi-sectoral, and transdisciplinary approach toward achieving optimal health outcomes in a manner that recognizes the interconnection between people, animals, plants, and their shared environment. They also use the terms pandemic preparedness, partner countries, relevant federal departments and agencies. It's never ending. The terms that they use are never ending, and the both American and global organizations that are all a part of this are endless. So again, whether the WHO passes anything this week, next week, or any other time, it's not that they even have to tell anybody. It's already law. It's already here. It's already in hospital policy. It's clearly connected to school and university policy. They've already done it. They did it 4 years ago. That's what the response was in 2020. That response was driven by lawyers. And lawyers saying everybody's doing this, everybody's shutting down, everybody's closing their doors. We're going to do it too no matter what. And they did. Now, yeah, not everybody did it, but then, of course, what did they force on everybody when they all came back to school? And when everybody went back to work? Wear your mask. Take your shots. If you take your shots, you don't have to wear the mask. Oops, joke's on everybody. You're all going to die. You're all going to get sick eventually. We're going to ruin everybody's DNA because that's the scheme. And one of the things, too, and I'll end with this, one of the things, too, that Sabrina Wallace brought up in one of her more recent videos, and I watched it, and again, it had a lot to do with AI systems, of course, and the government control, again, of nanotechnology and putting this technology into people under the guise of medicine or being some preventative measure of some kind. She honed in on a point at the end of the video, which I thought was 100% accurate, and it's something I've brought up on the show, too, is that you need youth studying this kind of information and giving presentations on this kind of information in order to brainwash them, because youth will listen to youth. Not always, but certainly in some cases. And these companies, even like the one I mentioned earlier with Northrop Grumman, they hire college graduates and they have them intern with them. The college graduates have no idea what Northrop Grumman actually does. They might say, well, we create weapons defense systems and we do really important stuff, and this is what we do. It's a personality type. I wouldn't say an overachiever per se, but I would just say that it's certainly a kind of personality type, certainly someone who's remarkably naive in order to work for any of these companies and these organizations that are actually advocating for the destruction of people. In fact, let me give you one quick example here. Because again, you need youth in order to push these ridiculous policies. And like I said earlier, these policies aren't going away. And when you work for these giant corporations, whether it be, again, government or hospitals or whatever, and of course they're all in each other's back pockets, letters like the one that I'm going to read right now have to be written by these organizations, and then they have to be implemented. And you can't make this up. So I'll end with this letter. This is out of New Zealand, which of course has a massive jabbed population, and many of them are dead. And remarkably sick, of course. This was dated May 21st of 2024, written to an Irene Carmen, and this is from the Health New Zealand, Te Watu Ora, if I'm saying that right, and it's clearly some, again, hospital conglomerate or health conglomerate associated with New Zealand, and they're sending this to a patient. They said the following: Dear Irene, I am writing to you regarding your communication to the heart and lung transplant team about eligibility for heart transplant without COVID vaccination. Unfortunately, the FOIA that you have received from Te Watu Ora had incorrect information. Firstly, I would like to apologize for this incorrect information that you received. A new communication from Te Watu Ora will be coming to your lawyer, Kristen Murfitt. It says the process on how this incorrect information occurred is being followed up to ensure further events like this do not occur. We realize this error and confusion may be upsetting for you. The correct information is that the eligibility for both heart and lung transplant has not changed from when previously discussed with you. 2 COVID vaccinations remain a criterion for consideration for transplant. This is along with other vaccinations that are integral to pre-transplant eligibility. The COVID vaccine can be of any fully approved vaccine in New Zealand. The Heart and Lung Transplant Clinic team have based this on the knowledge that this protects the patient, the donor organ, and also the other immunosuppressed transplant patients that will be in close contact. Our position is in keeping with the policy from the Transplantation Society of Australia and New Zealand, or TSANZ, TSANZ. It says TSANZ recommends that all transplant or potential transplant recipients be advised to undergo a primary course of COVID vaccinations with recommended booster doses as per ATAGI and the New Zealand Ministry of Health, quote unquote. February of 2024, it says, sincerely yours, and then it's signed. So this policy has been in place since February of 2024 of this year, and this letter went out to this individual who, again, was attempting to FOIA information to find out as to whether or not they actually had to receive COVID vaccinations in order to get a heart transplant or even a lung transplant. You can't make this up. This is actually real. Again, I don't even think I have to give the specifics on the health impact of all of it. You already know. You're already well aware. No one's thinking here. And again, the irony is overwhelming, and the stupidity is overwhelming. They want you to kill yourself before you get a heart transplant in an attempt to save your life. And this has been going on for a very long time. But you need the gullible in order to follow through with such orders and write these letters and create this policy. This policy still exists. It exists lots of places. Thank God we still have some rights left in the United States, but man, some of these foreign countries, they're finished. It just continues to be very, very wild. And again, if people don't stand up and just continue to say no, and more people don't walk away from these particular professions, then no one's going to get the picture. No one's going to change. Again, people need hospitals for the purpose of survival, clearly. Everybody knows that. But at the exact same time, they've been killing endless people this entire time. So when does a hospital stop being a place that saves lives and start being a place that murders people for policy? Well, that's been happening for the last 4+ years. In fact, it's kind of always been happening. Because one of the deadliest professions, as we all know, are medical doctors. They kill more people than anyone, in the United States certainly, than any other profession. But, whoops-a-daisy. They get to just blame a policy, or they get to blame a particular drug that, doesn't have a face or a person behind it. And they can just say, well, I don't know what happened. Sometimes people just die. This, too, again, is part of the artificial intelligence. This is part of the molding individuals into not actually thinking and just doing what they're told because a robot told them to, or a policy told them to. And then, of course, they get to blame a foreign government or even a global government as being the reason for the policy without taking any personal responsibility whatsoever. Again, global government has to be destroyed. The WHO, the WEF, it all has to be destroyed. The people associated with it have to be destroyed. The people who have it on their resumes and use this kind of stuff in these associations as resume builders, they have to be embarrassed. We have to get to a stage in our society where they are embarrassed to even have that associated with anything that they've done in the past. Until that happens, they're just going to keep doing what they're doing and plugging along. But we've got to avoid it as much as humanly possible. So it'll be interesting to see again what happens with this so-called pandemic treaty again later this week, or even if they even mention anything or have any kind of announcement. But I don't know. Time will tell. Okay, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for listening, and I will catch you on Friday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.